This is day 3 of the July 89 7-day retreat in Springwater. Someone said, I find it a bit confusing. At times you talk about listening clearly or openly, and you talk about seeing openly, then about feeling. Are these all different ways? You talk about looking at something or listening to something. Are you implying a different approach with that? No, I don't. These are different words, and when there is going on, then one talks about listening. When a reaction may come up, first labeling it, a motorcycle, and maybe the reaction. What is that doing here? It's a disturbance or distraction. Then one could say, can one listen to labeling, or can one see a label come up on this internal display, a screen, which we don't quite know how it operates in the brain? If annoyance is coming up about a distracting noise, can one feel the body manifesting symptoms of annoyance or anger, resistance? But one could also say, can one listen to the body resisting or angering? Can one see it? Can one feel it? Listen to it? It's all the same thing. And what's the same is that the senses are not separate. We think they are, and they function separate as long as we think they're separate. And we talk, and label them as separate, label their objects as separate. They're listening objects and seeing objects and feeling objects. And physiologically, there are different processes involved in seeing with the eye, the retina, the optic nerve, and listening, and touching. There are different parts of the body, of the nervous system, of the brain involved. And yet, what we're asking, not as an empty question, but with the fullness of, well, I want to go into how I'm asking the question. Can the senses work as one? Not as separate channels, separated through thinking past experience, different reactions that are labeled. But can there be the depth of perception in which all senses are as one? Not to make a problem out of it. That this seems an impossible task to accomplish. It's not a task to be accomplished. It happens on its own. when the labeling, discriminating, reactive mind of thinking and concepting is quiet, or quiets down. And there's the immediacy of perception. An upwelling feeling of joy or anger, fear, anxiety, or the sound of the birds. The wild flowers, looking at one of them. Maybe one can look at the color-studded meadow, or one can look at one of them. One flower, big or small, one rose on a bush. Can one look at it completely? Listen to it, smell it, see it, touch it. With no comment about it? The comment may come up. Can that also be seen, listened to, felt as it comes, appears on the inner screen from memory of language, memory of having seen and smelled roses before? And understanding at that instant as the comment, the knowledge, the words come up, understanding at that instant that that package of input is not this rose. What is this rose? If I don't know it, I have to look for the first time. Not yesterday I looked at the rose and I saw it. No, what is it? What is it right now? Or the feeling of resistance coming up that some people have talked about. I don't want to do this thing. The thought, I may fail at it, I may not be able to do it. Look at resistance, not, I've looked at it in past retreats and I found out what it is, I have knowledge about it. But how does it manifest right now, this instant? Physically, verbally, tactilely. So whenever the word listening is used, it means complete attention given. All the senses there, open. Not one over the others. Words that come up about it, I can do it, I can't do it. She's talking about something that's not for me, or whatever may come up. That's another sense, a sense of thinking. In Buddhism, thinking is called the sixth sense, consciousness. It's not so different. someone said, well, in doing this work of attending, are you just talking about sensation? See, that's the difficult with talking about something. The talking about it, the words that are used, can never possibly be the thing that is talked about, and the thing is also not a thing. When the senses function as a whole, not divided, not at odds with each other, not constantly interpreted, reacted to, then is that sensation, or is it a different kind of a state of mind that one better not have a fixed label for? Because why do we want a label? Why do we want to know, well, this is sensation, or this... One person asked me, why do you never talk about enlightenment anymore? Why does one want these words to be used? What is it in oneself that wants to have the certainty of words? Words can be delivered, but what do they stand for? Is that clear? What are they trying to express? Is that glimpsed or seen, listened to? So when a question comes up like, is that sensation, is that all sensation, or is that enlightenment, or why don't you talk about it? Can one look inward and find out where the question comes from, what the motive is, what it is that one wants? And then maybe wonder about wanting, the whole process of wanting something, wanting certainty, wanting what one thinks others have, wanting to have a goal to attain that one has read about, heard about, cherished maybe in the past, maybe in the present. But what is wanting? Someone said, I've been discontented all my life. Always dissatisfied, no matter what I do. Trying this, trying that. Never, ever satisfied with a job, a career, a relationship. The place to live. What is this discontent? What is wanting? Can one turn that question inward? Not think about it, but observe it as this wanting manifests. being here but wanting to be there, having this but wanting to have that. Always this pain of unfulfilledness, incompleteness, shallowness or emptiness inside. What is that? Will one ask the question? And really delve into it as one comes upon it through this questioning, this sense of incompleteness, lack, wanting, emptiness, loneliness. All one's life one has tried to fill it with something. Job, career, relationship, things, places, spiritual practices. And the gnawing discontent remains there underneath. What is that? Why don't we look at that? Why don't we make acquaintance with that? I was telling someone, because it just suddenly came back during a meeting, a memory of many years, many years ago, when I just started doing some counseling. Amateurish counseling. I've never been trained to be a counselor. And a woman came for an appointment who looked haggard, haunted. She looked haunted. And she confided in me that there was a ghost in her apartment, or in her house. At first it was just in one room, then in another room too, and now she was convinced it was pretty much all over the place. She was scared to turn the lights off, scared to go to bed, for fear of meeting up with this ghost. And the question that came up, and that I asked her was, have you ever face to face met this ghost? Obviously the ghost wants to be around you. And yet the ghost is avoiding you, and you're avoiding the ghost. Can there be a friendly meeting? Maybe have some coffee ready and some pastry. Some good stuff that you like. And the next time this ghost is around, invite it to meet over coffee and Danish. I'm making it sound funny, but I was very serious about it. Serious and yet light. What I would do if I felt a ghost was haunting my house, I don't know. But it seemed like a good idea to me. After all, this thing was going on. Seeking each other out, yet avoiding each other. And wanting to put an end to the whole thing. Get rid of it. Not being able to. So why not meet each other? Invite each other in a friendly way. Can one proceed like that with this inner emptiness, discontent, shallowness, lack, wanting, incompleteness or unfulfillment? We want to get rid of things about ourselves, but we don't know them. We haven't met them. We haven't looked at them, listened to them, felt them, touched them directly, not through fantasy, but the immediacy of being together. The woman said she would do that. I didn't see her for years. Again, now I see her every once in a while, and she looks as if she was in good shape. She doesn't look haunted. One thing that has been asked twice already at this very beginning of retreat, has been a retreat in which we sort of seem to jump in from the very beginning. And the questions were, will it be possible to take this state of being, which is so easily come upon here, home with me. Take it home with me, where there's anything but this lack of pressure, being with things, not a constant agenda running in the mind, having to get this and this and this and this done, and almost never a free moment even for a walk. Constantly needing to do, be occupied, achieve, attain, be something, become something, get something finished. So one has to look how one is living this moment, whether it's here in Springwater or at home with the kids, the family, at work, or at home maybe with the kids and the family, but feeling I ought to be doing something more important, something more worthwhile, and planning for it, being the mind and body being occupied with what I'm going to do next year or tomorrow or in my future. How does one live, putting it that way? How is one single moment lived by a human being, by me and you? How is one single moment lived? One single moment of sitting, of walking, of listening, looking at a rose, smelling the fragrance, washing a dish, listening to a child, changing a diaper, cooking a meal, at work, whatever one may be doing, with the hands or with the brain, or both. The relationship with the people at work, the relationship with the children, husband, wife, companion. One moment. Can there be one moment in which we're not someplace else, in fantasy. The fantasy also affecting the body. If one, in imagination of fantasy, is already thinking of the next thing I have to say or do or accomplish, then the body is in gear. The wheels are turning. There is some energy churning to accomplish the next thing, say the next thing, or get done with this, this, and this. And where is this moment? What is happening to it? This one instant of nowness. I hate to use those words, they're so overused, but we can use it carefully and not fall into idea or idealism. This one moment of nowness, of here-ness, or being here with everything that's here. Everyone and everything. This instant. It doesn't need to be an instant of sitting quietly, motionlessly. It can be an instant of, well, we went through it, doing some manual work, brain work, writing, fixing something, cooking. Is the body-mind fully present at this instant? Which means not thinking about the next moment, what I should be doing, where I should be, what I should have, unless it is part of the work of this instant. One may be planning to build a house, or make a trip, fix an engine. And this moment, in settling down to fix an engine, the mind has to think about things that one has to get, parts or a place, a location to fix this engine. So we're not talking about a mind that is controlling itself not to think of the next moment, but is the thinking of the next moment intrinsic to this moment, part and parcel of this instant of working or being or relating? Or is it an escape from this to that, trying to get away from this by thinking about that? Or getting away from this may not be the conscious intention to get away from this by thinking of that, but by thinking of what I have to do, what else I have to do and accomplish and become. How can I pay attention to this instant? I can't, because the mind is revved up with plans for the future. And the future may be the next moment. It's an amazing discovery, which is relatively easy during a retreat. Just to be here with whatever's going on. And not slurring over it, which means knowing it. I know what's going on. Then one can't see what's going on. If one knows the rose, one doesn't look. The other day, two of us in the meeting room were looking at a daisy. Just looking at it. Just at that daisy. And there was a brown dot a little brown dot in the yellow cushion inside the daisy. I didn't pay particularly attention to that brown dot because it was a spot, it was a dot. The mind had already knew it. And then suddenly that brown dot was at a different space. Tiny little dot. It was a tiny little creature. It wasn't a dot. We miss so much when we know what everything is and what you are, what I am. Know it from past accumulated knowledge. So the question, could I take something that is happening here, can I take that home with me? Or actually, the way of saying it was rather, I wish I could, but it probably won't work. One knows it may not work, but can one be free of conclusions about it? And find out whether at home or at work, there can be moments in which the pressure lifts because the mind and body are here. The seeing, looking, tasting, touching, hearing is here. And that's only possible if they're not already ideas, well, this is not something worthwhile here. That's old hat, or I know this inside out. This is boring. And maybe, but can one give it a second chance, a look again? It may not be. Because the state of boringness is, I don't want to be here, I want to be there. This is not for me, which is idea. It doesn't come out of a mind that is open and wholly in touch. In that state there is no boringness. It doesn't occur. Maybe unpleasantness because there may be pain or discomfort. But what is pain and discomfort? People at the beginning of retreat, some people have mentioned immense fatigue, immense tiredness, just needing to sleep and rest. And oftentimes a person then feels guilty about that. Did I come to retreat to sleep? And then feeling bad. But what is tiredness? What is fatigue? As one is sitting, one can ask it, and when one is lying down, can one be so there? Not thinking one should be up and around like the others and compare and get miserable from comparison. How can one rest comfortably if one compares oneself with others? Of course, the thought is something wrong with me if I'm tired. That thought is fatiguing, causes fatigue. Something must be wrong with me. One hates the thought of it. And one of the responses to thoughts that are hated or images about oneself that are disliked, one response of the organism is to nod out, to feel tired. Because one doesn't want to face all these negative ideas about oneself that have been built up over the years, with which we come to another question that has occurred in several meetings. This tremendous burden of not feeling worthwhile, of feeling like always a potential failure, maybe an actual failure. Not feeling good enough is how one person, I think, expressed it. Always not feeling good enough. We've already talked a little bit about how these self-images under which one labors get formed in one's life, how one has been labeled since early times of one's life with other people, with sisters, brothers, and parents, maybe uncles or grandparents, teachers. A tiny new baby doesn't feel worthwhile or worthless. It just is. It drinks and screams and sleeps. Begins to smile. A tiny little baby begins to smile as though the sun is coming out of the clouds. It doesn't think good and evil, right or wrong. But these notions are constantly implanted in the brain and the memory, being compared with other children in the family or other children of the neighborhood or in the school. And it seems that the natural way of responding to images is to live up to them, to believe in them, and to sort of incorporate that idea of oneself, to incarnate it. No good. That's why it's so dangerous to talk about little children in their presence about what they are like. As parents, we think, oh, the kids don't hear, they're just playing, or they forget. But the brain doesn't forget, it keeps registering. But no matter how it happened, here we are. We all have these ideas about ourselves, which either give us a boost, but more often than not, depress us or make us feel inadequate, insufficient, not good enough, possibly failing at something, and therefore not even wanting to try. One person said that, finally discovered that the resistance during the first days of retreat, which seemed to sort of just a mass of something which was called resistance, and then there it is. But in looking at it, what emerged was the idea, I won't be able to do that. And once this was seen, the whole thing could dissolve. Because one doesn't have to take seriously or as truth the ideas we have of ourselves. We do, but we can question that. We can question our belief and faith in these ideas of ourselves. They're based on judgment, on other people's judgment. And we have lived up to it and reconfirmed the people's judgment. So they judged some more. And we judged ourselves. But whether we're good or no good, let's find out. As we go, without an idea about ourselves. Is that possible? You could say it's impossible. That idea is glued to me. Haunts me, one person said. There's where the ghost story came up. Let's meet this not good enough me. What is it? This not good enough me. Will one meet it, find out more about it, what it is, as it manifests? As what does it manifest? Can one see it? Be free from conclusions from the outset, free from ideas about how permanent it is, how real it is, how true it is. We're questioning whether one has to have any idea about oneself, good or bad. Because the thought usually is you have a lot of bad ideas. What you need to do is substitute good ideas for the bad ideas, and then you'll feel better. And there are ways of training oneself to think freshly about, I don't want to use that word, in a new way, in a different way about oneself, with new images. I once was invited to participate in a counseling session which was devoted to inculcating in the members who were there that regardless of how unimportant they felt, they really were important. People really were important. And the two counselors there did their level best through all kinds of methods and things to, I felt it was almost like brainwashing people into thinking that they were important. Inviting people to say this about themselves so that they begin to believe it rather than believe the idea that they're unimportant. And one person sort of innocently spoke up and said, to me this isn't important whether I am important or not important. What you're doing here seems to be very abstract and smacks of brainwashing. I didn't say that. I thought that. I just said this isn't important to me whether I felt unimportant, I felt important, but what of it? So he was told that he had a problem with this whole thing. So we're asking. We do think about ourselves all the time, or most of all the time, but is that essential to our living as healthy human beings? We do it, it happens, but can one question the whole thing? Think about how good one is, how important one is, what a failure one is, what a success one has been. Is that at all necessary, even though it's going on? Just because it goes on 90% of the time does not validate it. So can one listen in, first of all, to hear the constant comment about oneself? And how, if one listens sensitively, how that may change a purely observed fact. It changes it. It impacts it by having comment about it. I'm good at this or I'm no good at it. Rather than just being with what is the fact. And then the overall question we're asking, whether one needs to have images about oneself at all, albeit one has them. But what function do they serve? How do they impact our moment-to-moment living? How we are addicted to them. And the fear of not having something to think about ourselves, a certain way to think about ourselves. It's like the fear of withdrawal from a source of input, source of feelings, not just mental input, but every thought about ourselves, good or bad, affects this total organism in a total way. Through 30,000 chemicals, I once read. In one moment, 30,000 chemicals active in this body. Transported around by electricity. I'm probably putting this in a most naive way, but it's something like that. It's a radical question to ask. Are self-images necessary at all? And not to say yes or no, but to watch it, watch what they do. And in the watching, in the seeing and listening to this internal display of what I am, what I'm not, in the seeing of the display, as image, as accumulated knowledge, can there be a freeing from it? Being free of it. Free from this tremendous impact of good and bad. I'm good, I'm bad. And the attention being in what am I from moment to moment, not as an image or what I should be, but how do I think, and how does the thinking affect the action, alone and in interrelationship. And we'll come upon amazing things about what image does, how it restricts and restrains or expands, feeling aggrandized through it, and how it separates from each other. If I feel inferior, I feel separate from you. If I feel superior to you, I also feel separate from you. And this is what we're all suffering from, is our isolation from each other. And yet we cling to these images as our source of good feelings or bad feelings. We're still attached to it, also when it's bad feelings. One person mentioned that to me. He said, I had a great insight. I've been attached to this idea of suffering, being a sufferer, having a hard time, being so badly off, having so hard to work, etc., etc. She's laughing and saying, she's attached to all that. That sort of gave me something to be and some power. Because then other people have to feel sorry for you. Maybe take care or take an interest in you. There was a power play. I've seen that. I don't know whether I'll do it again, but right now I'm free of that. Not to assume that a moment of freedom will last, or one can sort of rapid package it, put it in a knapsack and take it home. It has to be born anew every instant. Through this seeing, listening, feeling, being in touch with the real thing. Not the idea of the real thing, but the real thing. We will end here for today.